So I promise I'm not going to spoil anything in this video, but Oda has been awesome with queer representation in the most recent arc of One Piece. And I've been thinking a lot about making a video on this new character, but as I was thinking, I realized it really shouldn't come as a surprise that we have a new queer character in One Piece because Oda has always been interested in queerness, and some of the most likable characters in One Piece are queer. I use the word queer because it's the most nebulous and inclusive term for people who don't fit into the cis heterosexual mold. Because in the end, what exactly is Bonkure and Ivankov? Are they gay? Are they trans? I mean, with Ivankov and his hormone power, that seems very much tied to being transgender. But wait, so if Ivankov identifies as female, we should use she, her? What is the deal here? Well, they're Okama, and Okama is a Japanese concept of queerness that doesn't translate directly to a Western sense of queerness, which may cause some confusion and might have led some Western audiences to see the portrayal of Ivankofu and Bonkure as insensitive caricatures. So let's discuss what is an Okama and how is it different to the different categories of queerness we have in the West. What does Okama mean? So there are many theories as to how the word Okama evolved into slang for queerness. But by the Edo period, Okama was used to refer to gay men. So this slang has been around since the 18th century, and it's had time to evolve its meaning. So let's talk about the modern use and perception of this word. Okama was originally more of a derogatory word in which the straight population would call certain people Okama. There are a number of different types of people who may be referred to as Okama: effeminate gay men, male cross-dressers, trans women who are not cis-passing, and gender non-binary or non-conforming men. So it's kind of a catch-all terminology for a queer man who is not cis-passing or straight-passing. A masculine gay man wouldn't be called Okama, and a cis-passing trans woman would not be called Okama. So it kind of seems like a category created by the cis and the straights to just jumble together all the queer men they couldn't understand, which is hella crappy. But some queer men have embraced this label and have used it as a means to build a community in which you don't have to identify as gay or trans to join, but you are a man who wants to express outside of the traditional masculine mold and embrace femininity. So in the end, being Okama isn't 100% about sexuality or gender identity. Really, it's about self-expression and about the freedom to express yourself however you like. And it's interesting to see Oda create a version of this inclusive and welcoming Okama community in One Piece as well. In One Piece, the Okamas have their own island where they have a kingdom. This kingdom is a place where those with the heart of a maiden gather, and therefore their memberships come from across the world to learn the Okama way. There was also an Okama community established in level 5.5 of Impel Down, called Newcomerando, a pun on newcomer, but also a mix of two concepts, Okama and Nyuhafu. Nyuhafu is another Japanese queer term which is used to describe a trans woman, but this term is closer to something like ladyboy, where the context is more exoticizing and fetishizing trans women more than a term used by trans people themselves. And it makes sense that level 5.5 is a mix of Okama and Nyuhafu, because Newcomer has more of an explicitly trans vibe going on, with all the members being able to change genders thanks to the powers of Ivankofu. Now, let's analyze a bit further. Are the depictions of Okama in One Piece fair? Do they perpetuate negative stereotypes, or are they good Okama role models? The first Okama we meet in One Piece is Bonkure, aka Mr. 2. He was a part of the criminal organization Barokuakusu and was an antagonist to the Straw Hats. Bonkure practices Okama Kenpo, the specific brand of martial arts practiced by the Okama, and his devil fruit ability is the Manemane no Mi, allowing the user to mimic the physical appearance of anybody he has touched. Most Barokuaku's agents work in pairs, with one female agent who is named after a day of the week or a holiday, and one male agent who is given the title of Mr. Insert whatever number. Interestingly, Bonkure works alone, and not only that, he is given two titles, Mr. 2 and Bonkure. Yeah, Bonkure was just the title. His real name is Bentham. Bonkure, also known as Urabon, refers to the end of the year. So it's New Year's Eve and the end of the year holidays. So with his dual naming, Bonkure is presented as being both male and female. Therefore, he completes the pair just by being himself. I mean, that's awesome. Bonkure being considered capable as a solo unit because of his duality is a really cool way to think about gender. Although they start off as enemies, Bonkure ends up immediately getting along with Luffy. Luffy and Bonkure share similar values, and they respect each other a lot for each other's idealism. Bonkure and Luffy do many favors for each other, and when they reunite in Impel Down, Bonkure makes major sacrifices to help Luffy out. It's also interesting to see Bonkure command a crew comprised of non-Okama who respect Bonkure and admire him for his badassery. I particularly love this line from Bonchan.
男の道をそれるとも、女の道をそれるとも、踏み外せぬは人の道。
This perfectly encapsulates the Okama belief. Fuck gender roles. Who cares about being a man or a woman? Just be yourself and be a decent human being. I love Bonchan. And he was a great first Okama character to have in One Piece, and we get to meet more Okama characters as the series goes on. In the most pivotal arcs of One Piece, Impel Down / Marineford, Luffy gains major allies in the form of convicts that escape from Impel Down, with a huge majority of them being Okama from level 5.5, or New Kamarando, ruled by Emporio Ivankov. Ivankov is the king of Kamabakka Okoku, a kingdom on an island that is solely occupied by Okama. We'll talk more about Kamabakka Okoku in a little bit. Ivankov is also a high-ranking officer in the Revolutionary Army, and possesses the power of the Horuhoru no Mi, also known as the Hormone Devil Fruit, which allows him to use hormones in a variety of ways, including changing the gender of himself and others. When we first meet Ivankov, he is a prisoner at Impel Down, but he had created a refuge in a secret part of the prison, known as New Kamarando. The inmates that join New Kamarando are all given the option to swap genders, thanks to Ivankov's powers. And the land is a mix of trans and Okama people who are all very kind and expressive. The members of New Kamarando aren't hung up on labels. They dress how they want and act how they want and are very welcoming to outsiders. The inmates of New Kamarando become Luffy's first major allies in the Summit War, and they are shown to be very strong and reliable people who empathize with Luffy's quest to free his brother. So, to repeat myself, in the most major war in the One Piece world up till this point, our main protagonists' first major allies were the empathetic queers. That is amazing. So, up to this point, I was really happy with how Oda depicted queer characters in One Piece. It's super rare to see queer good guys in comics and anime. Seriously, even some of the most gay anime out there only have queer baddies, so it was refreshing to see really positive Okama representation through the characters of Ivankov and Bonkure. And an interesting note, both Ivankov and Bonkure's powers allow them to change their physical appearance, meaning if either of them wanted to, they have the ability to pass as a cis woman or a cis man. Yep, they both choose to present themselves in a way that doesn't necessarily conform to societal norms of what a man should look like or what a woman should look like. This is very in line with the Okama idea, which is more about true self-expression than anything else. Anyways, let's move on and let's talk about Kamabakka Okoku, alright? So when each member of the Straw Hat was sent off to a different location by Basaru Miyukuma, we learned that Sanji ended up at Kamabakka Okoku. And so we learn more about what this kingdom is like. We learn that not only are the people Okama, but the animals are Okama as well. It's a safe place where those who have a more feminine soul can come and express themselves however they like. And in theory, that sounds great. But the Okama in Kamabakka are presented as more of a scary gay. Unlike the members of New Kamarando, who are of relatively normal proportions, the Okama and Kamabaka are all very large compared to the average human and have disproportionately humongous faces. They are kind of the embodiment of the negative stereotypes of a trans woman who is not passing. Their body size and face size and shape give away their biological sex. Not only that, but they have stubble on their face and have hairy legs. But here's the thing. The Okama and Newcomer also had hairy legs and some of them had facial hair. So you might think, well, what's the difference? But if you watch, it's super clear that the Okama of Kamabaka are a mockery of Okama, whilst the Okama and Newcomer are a positive portrayal. It's hard to put to words what exactly distinguishes these two groups. And maybe part of it is the role they play in the story. The Okama of Newcomer Lando were allies to Luffy, whilst the Okama and Kamabaka are an obstacle for Sanji. The Okama are convinced that Sanji is one of them, because of course, as mentioned earlier, the only reason why people come to Kamabaka is because they want to live the Okama life. The Okama are quite forceful with trying to make Sanji realize that he's an Okama. They force him to wear a dress and put on makeup. And this is a negative stereotype. The idea that there is a gay agenda and that the queers want to convert everybody. But, to be honest, I did find it amusing to see Sanji, the womanizer, the nosebleed misogynist of the group, be forced to embrace his femininity. There's a scene where Sanji is forced to wear a dress and fight against an Okama. And Sanji isn't able to go full out with his kicks because he's embarrassed to lift his legs up that high whilst wearing a dress. And this is interesting because if Nami had lifted her legs for a kick whilst wearing a short skirt, Sanji would have been ogling and loving it. But when he's put in that same situation, he can't get himself to do it. And this could have been a learning moment for Sanji in which he realizes how vulnerable women feel when they are stared at by men all the time. If Sanji had come out of his 2-year training in Kamabaka as more empathetic towards women because he finally understands what it means to have the heart of a maiden, I could maybe excuse the aggressive, scary gaze. But this potential learning moment for Sanji didn't happen. And in fact, he came back even more obsessed with the real woman and in turn despised the fake women that he had spent 2 years with. Bruh, that's awful. The Kamabaka story made me like Sanji even less and reinforced queer stereotypes. In the end, what are my thoughts? Well, I think Oda is maybe net neutral when it comes to his queer brownie points. Maybe he leans slightly on the positive side. I cannot deny the positive impact that Bonkure and Ivankov have had. He did so much good in the beginning, but also so much damage with this Kamabaka story. But I think Oda's gonna gain some queer points with the story unfolding in Wano Kuni. But that's a video for another time. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment. I would love to know your thoughts.